From the shelter-in-place studio of Leslie Jackson, welcome to The Leslie Show. I'm joined from his studio in Oakland, California by Peter Libby, drummer, educator, and very long-time friend. Hi. We go back to 1983. I pretty much spent a lot of my senior year with you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about the rock band that you were playing with at that time, too.
They went on to do great things. I was the drummer for Primus. I was the first drummer for Primus because they changed the name from Primate. Primus when I was in the band. Les used to come in to copy Matt, where I was working my real job, and we would do posters. So he'd come in with the posters, and we do posters for the gigs. It was ground floor. We were at the Emeryville Warehouse Studios. We had our room faced out onto the faced west. So you had, thinking back, what a splendid room it was. You know, you could be as loud, as late as you wanted, and it had an entire 20-foot by 15-foot wall of glass facing west. So it was just a marvelous rehearsal.
Well, not to wax too nostalgic, but I was at that first Primate show at the Mabuhay Gardens when you guys sort of came out. Les's mom was there with a clipboard and a pen, and she was going around taking down everybody's address to put us on their mailing list so we could receive postcards when there were Primate shows.
Yep. We played at the Berkeley Square, and we opened for the Red Hot fucking Chili Peppers.
Yes, I was there. University Avenue. Yeah.
Original band.
Yes.
That was, and they showed me what it takes to own a stage.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys, I have never seen anything like it. I wasn't really aware of the kind of polish that the LA scene put on every band, not just the glam bands. You remember how small the Berkeley Square was?
Big as a minute. Great times. Well, let's not wax too nostalgic. This is a really special episode because, as I told you, Peter, when I interview people, they often want to perform something. So all my guests up to this show have either sent in a video to paste in, or they have performed while we're in our conversation. I told you about that. You've done something really unique, which is prepared a lesson for our viewers.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Well, you are an educator. I've even had a lesson or two from you.
Yeah, I taught a bunch. Yeah.
And you came up formally through drumming education. You want to talk about that?
Early on, I got a practice pad in the Wilcoxon book, which I still have. All my books are over there. But it was too dry. And then I got introduced to Donn Spindt of the Roobinoos. And Donn is super undercover. People don't really realize his hands are tremendous hand skills on him. I have a pad called a focus pad. It has a little rubber. It has this rubber about the size of a silver dollar.
Yeah.
And then the sides of the pad fall away. So you sit there and you do this. And if you miss the pad, your stick falls away. Right? Donn made these pads. These are his pads. Neat. He made them on a lathe and put the rubber and did the whole 9 yards. I sit in front of the Tour de France and do doubles and singles while I'm watching skinny guys race. But after that, I got gigs. I got a lot of gigs, and I was playing a lot of high-end music at home. So Weather Report and what Chick Corea, Return to Forever.
Yeah.
I started finding out how many of my heroes went to Berklee School of Music, how many of them study jazz, how many of them are well-rounded players that do everything. They don't just play rock and eschew everything else. And then when my best friend Bjorn told me that he was going to go to MI in Los Angeles, I thought, my God, I don't need to go all the way to the East Coast. The guy that I went there to study with is this guy, Casey Sherrill.
Sherrill.
He's the drummer on Jean-Luc Ponty Live. And he's the drummer on Enigmatic Ocean.
Okay, so you go down to MI, and that actually, my little 17-year-old summation of you as sort of a drummer's drummer is not far off the mark.
You know, that's just too heady a thing for me to accept. I don't know about drummer, but you know, but when I think really... drummer, I think of those guys.
Okay, but you were being educated in that. You were being educated, period.
But those were great days, man.
That's so great. Such a great age to be passionate. And it has paid off in you as an instructor, as a performer, just as a listener. How about the ability to listen to music that you gain from studying it so closely? Just makes it so much more enjoyable, right?
Enjoyable in a different way.
Uh-huh.
You know, I am very blessed in that I can disassociate from the technical bit. Like I can listen to, what did I listen to? Oh, you know, Sheryl Crow's album, Tuesday Night Country Club. Right. There is not a technically difficult performance from anyone on that album.
It's what makes good pop.
And I can listen to the whole fucking thing beginning to end, but the players are high end.
Yeah, is that Brian McLeod on drums?
Yeah, Brian is on drums. And so there's an emotional component that a lot of young technical players have to learn or grow into or unlearn a way of listening. You listen to music. I know it was that way for me a little bit when it was purely technical and all I'm doing is listening to what they're doing and, you know, transcribing or figuring out what this thing is or aping it or whatever.
Yes.
And you got to get away from that as quickly as possible because that doesn't get you hired. What gets you hired is choosing notes, not just spraying them all over the place. So like I submarined my own deal a lot by having too many chops and having too much vocabulary and not having the maturity to speak eloquently. I was just verbose. I would use 4 words when one would do, right? Or I'm having a conversation without listening. And, you know, people would see me play and they would hire me because I've got a bunch of stuff. Then they would fire me because I got a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, now I'm old and I can play time.
And choosy.
Yeah. It's important to not be selfish, you know, and the impetus behind selfish has myriad reasons, but you can't call yourself a musician if you're selfish.
It may take some selfishness or some belief in oneself that could be mistaken for selfishness to actually get where you are, to dedicate several hours a day to practicing. But then when you're in an ensemble situation, whether you're selfless or selfish really sort of comes clear.
Yeah, and you can really see the cats that are thinking of the ensemble on stage.
All right, are you ready? Let's get to this lesson. Sure. I'm so excited.
One of my favorite teachers was Ralph Humphrey, and he was one of the 2 heads of curriculum at MI. When you start talking about artificial groupings, odd time, odd meter, he literally wrote the book. And what he talks about is internalizing artificial groupings, internalizing groups that are non-standards. Everybody knows quarters, eighths, triplets, and 16th notes. And then they jump to 16th note triplets and 32nd notes. They don't do 5. They don't do 7. They don't do 9, but you can, because they don't parse out evenly. So people shy away from them. But if you embrace his technique, suddenly you open this huge world that demystifies these groupings and replaces mechanical understanding on your drum set with melodic understanding on your drum set. Because you don't approach these things with numbers. You approach them with syllables. Indian counting technique. Takita, 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 takita. That's groups of 3. Takita, takita. Dinaga is the Indian equivalent. So that's 3. Taka is 2. Dinaga is 3. Taka dinaga is 5. Taka taka takita is 7. Taka taka takita is 9. So you can take these taka takita, taka takita, that's 5. 2 and 3. Taka takita. You want to accent the first note of each group. Taka takita, taka takita, taka takita, taka takita, right? If you're playing those as 16th notes, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, right? You can break it up into groups of 5s. That was 15 notes. 15 16th notes. That leaves 1 left over. But you haven't changed the value of the note. They're 16th notes. But what you've done is you've phrased it in a different way, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? You want to play over the bar line, keep playing groups of 5, and you'll have 30 or 32 notes. So you'll have 2 notes at the end. One. 16th notes. Phrased in 5. 1. Right? So I'll turn up the quarter note beat. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fives.
Nice.
7s. That's 14 notes. 2 left over. 2 16ths left over. Right? So by using syllables, you internalize this in a visceral fashion rather than 1 E and a. Using numbers, for me, it goes to a different part of my brain, and I think of it as mathematic. It's a group of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get lost, or I do, but when I'm playing it as these phrases, the phrases are internalized. The pulse is internalized. And 1, right? So it's like ba 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 da 1. So that was 2. That was 8 measures of 16th notes phrased in 5. So you can put the 3 in the front, you can put the 2 in the front. Mm-hmm. If you're doing multiple groups of 5s, you're doing 3 5s, right? That's 15 notes. You could put all 3 groups of 2 at the front and then the three groups of three at the back.
Uh-huh.
Taka, 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 taka. Right? All three of the groups of two on the front. Same notes, it's the same values. It's just reinterpreting how they fit and what their pulse is and how you're going to feel them, how you're going to use them. So you take those stickings and you bring it onto the kit, and then you really start hearing melody. You hear melody before you think about doubles here and a single there. You just think of how that phrase feels and how it lopes through the time, the same way you feel the way 16th notes will lope through the time, right? So let me try and make some noise here. What I'll do is I'll play a groove, just a real simple groove, and I'm gonna play a fill that's phrased in 5, 16th notes grouped in 5, right? Okay. That was just Takadiniga. And then I diminuted it to a 32nd note fill at the end. And I was just doing, once again, I didn't change the orchestration of 2 and 3. It was always 2 and 3 all the way through. Instead of grouping them in groups of 4, 1 E and I'm grouping them in groups of 5, Takadiniga. So 1 E and But you know, you have to add another letter to that, or you could just Takadiniga. Now, there's Takadiniga. Then Dinigataka. To a point where it's like you've got the 5s internalized.
Yes.
And de-emphasized. Then you're just listening to a melody in your head, and you play over the bar line. Suddenly you've got your own accompaniment. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and you have not brought, and you are still playing in an ensemble that's doing 2/4. For example, with this, it's a way to sort of spice up a fill or an accompaniment that's still in 2/4 or 4/4.
Or any signature. This transcends. Mm-hmm. This is
okay, right? Because we're talking 16th notes. Yeah,
we're talking 16th notes here. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you can really take this deep. I find that when I've got the metronome going and I'm really trying to work 5s and stuff, I'll start going away and soloing over a pulse, an internalized pulse of 5s.
Yes, beautiful.
And you'll hear it. You'll hear nothing but 5s and groups of 5s and being de-emphasized and longer groups of 5s. And this one's a 32nd note or this one's a 16th. You can also do this with any subdivision. So like if you wanted to phrase triplets in 5, there's 4 triplets, right? All right. Right. So 5 and 5 is 10. You can get 2 groups of 5 as triplets because 2 notes are left over, and then you got 12, right? 3, 6, 9, 12 per quarter note or per measure. 1, 2, 3 teta, 4 teta, 1 teta, 2 teta, 3 teta, 4 teta, right?
Yeah.
Then So there it is. You can use this for any subdivision, and it frees you up to be melodic rather than intellectual. It frees you from the intellectualism of artificial groupings or strange phrasing of note.
Which is, I find, the thing that dries up some of the more intellectual players that are playing by math instead of by feel. I spend a lot of time listening to the Balkan tradition of music, that a lot of the dance music is in 5 and 7 and 9. There's a context for that. So the melodies are written around that time. The dances are in those times. And so you're really internalizing that. But in rock and roll, for example, when you try to overlay those odd times and art times, it can get really intellectual. There isn't this sort of context for it culturally. So what you're talking about is a way to heartify it, which is
True.
great for us.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's in 4/4, but you're phrasing in 5.
Yeah.
But the subdivision sounds familiar to the uninitiated, the rest of your bandmates, so they don't get freaked out or screwed up or misled by your phrase, because you're still playing 16.
You're still true to it.
Yeah, it makes a difference. You know, it makes a big difference for me. I want to point out to our audience, if you didn't notice already, Peter is about ergonomics. I didn't see your elbow fly away from your body. I didn't see anything rise to heights that did not need to be risen to. Efficiency, economy of motion. Your hands look completely relaxed. What do we have to thank for that but practicing? I would usually take a lesson or two from someone, and I wouldn't take another lesson because I would dive in and teach myself.
There'd be plenty to work on too if you take a lesson well. You walk away with 6 months of stuff to work on.
Exactly. If you want this, if you really want to be a money guy, you need to be able to read drums really well. Like first pass, you need to be able to read it without mistakes.
So
all the guys that I love, all the drummers that I emulate, all the guys that I'm impressed with, they took very traditional approaches to learning drums. The Wilcoxon book, this is an eighth note, this is a quarter note. Yeah. They went through that. I couldn't focus on something that easy. So I had already been playing by the time I went to this guy, and I could already do more than that. So it's very hard for me to reconcile.
That's hard. Yeah.
Doing something less than I know how to do. That was a pain in the ass. I played a lot. When I was a kid, I've always had a place to play. So my stepdad was a musician. And so we always had a music studio in the basement. So I always had someplace to practice. So I would come home from school and I would put on a couple of albums, and I would play to them. And then I would put on a Frank Zappa album, play to that, or I'd put on a UK album, or I'd put on a Return to Forever album. And I'm playing this stuff because I don't know it's hard.
Nice.
Everything's hard. Everything's hard when you don't know how to play. So I learned to play to Jeff Beck There and Back. I learned to play to Jeff Beck Wired. I learned to play to Return to Forever, Romantic Warrior. I mean, I learned to play drums to these things, all the Jean-Luc Ponty stuff.
Ooh.
It was, I'm an ear player. I'm a self-taught ear player. And then I went to school.
Okay, interesting.
And when I went to school, I could read a little bit, but the reason I didn't get put in the first class is because my reading wasn't as strong. But I had touched on all the styles, but I just couldn't quite read well enough. I had to do a placement test with Joe Porcaro. It's a good thing I didn't know him because I would have shit myself.
Yeah, it would have been distracting, huh?
It would have been pretty scary. But they said, you're probably better off in the class just below the top class. You have the same instructors and the same curriculum, but you'll be one of the better players in the class and you'll get better attention. So I said, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And I was the top guy in that class by a long shot. But they were right. It was good. It was good not to be with all the super hitters because I wasn't like those guys. And it would have just been intimidating.
Yeah, that's also a challenge.
Yeah.
You're just struggling to try to keep up then.
Struggling to try and keep up and struggling for me, struggling to give value to what I'm doing as well as what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Now as an adult, I still struggle with allowing myself to be good. I'm not real kind to myself about things like this that matter.
Right.
I'm terrible at it. Never good enough, never fucking good enough. Well, that really cleaves off a lot of opportunities. Thinking that you're not good enough, you don't give it a try.
Yeah, it's the big dilemma between knowing what is good and not thinking you're there.
Knowing yourself or even allowing yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What advice do you want to give to young players coming up in any instrument, but particularly drumming today?
Listen to every music.
What's that?
Listen to every music.
Beautiful.
Listen
all right.
to everything.
And listen. And listen.
And listen and really listen.
Period.
Listen to other instruments. Mm-hmm. Listen to the bassist. Listen to the guitar player. When your friends are playing, are your friends playing in time? You want to be the guy that knows. You want to be the authority, and you don't want to be an empty authority. You want to be the guy that knows, hey man, let's play that part again. Try and hit that with me this time. Like, you don't even get considered if you can't read well. You won't even be considered. It takes too much time to get you up to speed on arrangement. Yeah. So they're going to pick the guy that gets it.
Yeah,
like
literacy.
Mm-hmm. Literacy. So young drummers, be nice to the other players. Yeah. Listen to everything.
Yeah.
And learn to read.
Learn to read. Ear can be a crutch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's also no substitute for it.
True. You got to do both.
So I get called for gigs. Drummer broke his arm an hour ago. Gigs in 2 hours. They don't have charts for me. I get that call more often than I get any call. I'm the guy who gets called at the last fucking minute. Who do we call Libby?
The ringer.
My ears are huge.
He's a ringer with huge ears. So there is a role. Mm-hmm.
You want
just
both.
Not in theater.
You want both. Well, so the thing is that as a reader, you don't want to be stiff. You don't want to be an automaton.
Yeah.
And the thing about reading, the good readers, it's like they're able to emote off the page because they've seen the figure so many times that they don't have to decipher the figure. They look at it, they see it, they know what it is. They're already 2 measures ahead.
Yeah.
Right? You know, the big band acts, it's like if you use the syncopation page as that's the kind of figures you see in a big band, right? Becca, Becca, bat, bat, bat. So if you're playing a swing, right?
Yeah.
That phrase is going to be in a big band chart that you see. But you've already read that phrase 1,000 times.
Right. You see it as one. It's one vision.
Yeah, you just see the whole thing.
Chunk.
Oh, yeah. You know, you turn away and you're like asking the roadie for a beer. You want to be able to read like that, but then you want your interpretation of that figure to still be visceral, to still be you know, you're still trying to communicate to people that aren't musicians. Music is for everyone. It's not just for musicians. So for everyone to dig it, it can't be purely intellectual. It has to, it's got to come from someplace else. And the guys that are, one of the jobs that I had in LA was I was a professional studio cartage guy. So the only guys that afford that are the top 10 guitar players and the top 5 bass players in all of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So those are the guys that I was bringing into studios every day. Dean Parks worked every day, triple scale, sometimes doubles. So he was doing 3 and 4 TV shows a week, doing albums. I brought him to the theater for the Barbra Streisand gig. I brought him to the theater for the Emmys. So that's who this guy is.
Wow.
So him and Tim Pierce and Carl Verheyen, who John plays with, Mike Miller, Robin Ford. These are the guys that I would bring into the studio. The bass players, oh my God, just tremendous, but none of them played mechanically. Dean Parks was getting triple scale. That's $1,050 for a 3-hour session. He's doing doubles 5 days a week, right? His reading is off the charts.
Yes, literally.
It's off the charts.
So
and their ability to emote off the page.
Yes, it's like reading, being able to read a novel to someone and do the characters and read a couple of lines ahead and know what's coming up and to breathe at the right times. And yeah, absolutely. The voice actors have the same challenge.
I have a great story we could finish on with Dean Parks and reading. Went to work, got the schedule. Dean has the double this day, right? So he's in Hollywood at Sony. 3-hour session at Sony in the morning. Then a 3-hour session out at Snuffy Smith's home studio. So you remember that TV show with Roy Scheider where there was a submarine? It's like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea almost, modern version of Voyage. Anyway.
I hated TV, Peter.
Okay, so but it doesn't stop the business. So, and another show, Wonder Years. So he was doing the music for both of these.
Okay.
So he had a double, but you know, the session at Sony was a symphonic with ISO booths for the rhythm section. So with strings and horns, and then the rhythm section is over on the right in ISO booths. So we're waiting for Dean to get there because the second session starts when the first one ends. Woo! And he is 40 minutes away in the valley. So like we have to double his gear. We have to come in and grab his gear and split with it, get it to the next session for a down fucking beat because it's $1,050 an hour, this guy, right? Okay. So we're waiting for Dean. Dean comes in. Hey, Dean, how's it going? So, you know, you got a double today. So you're supposed to be out at Snuffy's. He goes, yeah, that's going to be close. How long is this going to take you? He goes, I don't know yet. And so we're waiting. The music director is coming through and he's putting the charts on everyone's music stand. And he sets the cues down on Dean's stand. And we watch Dean. We count with him because, like, you know, this is tense. And he counts through. He counts 19 cues. They could be anywhere from 20 seconds to a minute and a half, 3 minutes. 19 charts. He said, I'll be done in around 90 minutes. okay, we'll be back. We came back in an hour, just in case he finished early. And they were on the last cue. And it was supposed to be like a blue bossa, not a blue bossa, but Girl from Ipanema. It was a basic bossa. Right? So we're there for their first pass through the ink. And what they'll do is they'll do a pass, familiarize themselves, then they'll record 2 passes, and they get it right every time. First take. So we get in there for the first take. They're tearing this shit to pieces. It is Chick Corea's electric band in there. It is I don't know if you could see the hairs on my arm standing up thinking about it.
Just talking about it.
The engineer and the music director are in the booth with us, laughing out loud and shaking their head. Right? And then Dean comes on, he says, no, after they finish the pass, the music director stifles a laugh and goes, okay, are you guys ready? And Dean says, yeah, okay, let's roll one. And then they play it. They're not playing what they were just playing. They were in there jacking off over this ink and tearing it to pieces. And when it came time for the take that's recorded, they played the ink. But their ability to look at it, part of it is familiarity, part of it is technical, part of it is emotional. They went over, they looked at the changes, they looked at the groove, they looked at the time, they looked to see if there was any accents. They went 1, 2, 3, and burned over it.
Beautiful.
Burned over it. That was an enormous lesson. That is how you make it in Los Angeles as a musician.
Yeah.
Is you can read like that.
Yeah.
And then you're so fast, it's so easy for you to get up to speed with the information. That, time is money. When people are paying musicians, it can be expensive. So if you're the most expensive guy in the world and you take 1/3 the time, they're calling you, man.
Amen.
Yeah. So that's
beautiful story, Peter. That's awesome. I love that. And your exposure to that was soul food for you as an up and coming musician. Absolutely.
That was an incredibly rich education to have that gig.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate.
Yeah. You got to see what was possible and how impossible it was.
Yes.
Great.
Very impossible it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Peter, I'm in heaven. I wish we could sit here and do this all day. Just you sitting at your kit and me sitting here looking at you. Yeah. Peter? Stay on the beat. Stay on the good foot.
We'll do that. Thanks for the opportunity. It's a good time.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been a treat.
Right on.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
You've been watching an episode of The Leslie Show featuring Peter Libby. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you get yours. Lean on the like button. Drop a review if you would, please. To find out where Peter is playing and teaching next, you can follow him on Instagram at p.libbogeb. P. Libogeb. Music is by Primus, called Primate at the time of this recording, and not for long. Songs are by Les Claypool and Todd Huth. Thanks for joining us. You're listening to The Leslie Show.